Motion to open the meeting.
Second. Moved and second to open the meeting. All those in favor? And we are open and starting with no old business.
New business.
Under new business, the Bar Harbor Trust quarterly update. I think the Bar Harbor Trust folks just walked in. We have some paperwork. Our portfolio appraisal came out prior to that, and I'll turn it over to you folks.
Perfect. I also had a handout of it as well too, if anyone needed a copy. Just
I'll pass them down this way.
Can you give one to the two budget folks back there?
One each.
Did you want to move this yet, Lee? Yes. Yeah. Just make sure I have one for myself. But I think we'll have a couple extra. Thanks.
What color are these?
Don't ask.
Yes, it's the same copy. Yep.
What I emailed you was just this.
All right.
So what I thought I'd do for the quarterly review is do a brief economic update on where we see the markets, then we'll get into the specifics of the portfolio, and please feel free to interrupt with any questions you may have. So just where we see the economy right now, if you look on page 2, at that chart right there, this is showing the historical performance of the U.S. market versus the European market. You'll see the U.S. is in that orange line, Europe is in the white there, and the difference between the two is the red and the green. So where you see the red, that's the U.S. outperforming Europe, green, Europe outperforming the U.S. You can see that the ranges are pretty tight, but then they expand around 2012, with the U.S. market really outperforming Europe over the past 5 years. And that's really been the case in the market. So we took a look at this and said, Europe looks undervalued compared to the U.S., and we've been investing more in the European market as a result of that. Currently, we have about 20% in the international market. We've invested in a lot of companies, multinational companies, that are based out of Europe, but that do business all over the world. So that's really an area where we've been finding a lot of value on the stock side. On the fixed income side, we think it really all runs through the Federal Reserve. We think the Fed is going to continue to raise rates probably 2 more times this year, as long as we don't see any weakness in the market. So the Fed is really market dependent. And really the bigger issue with the Fed is the winding down of the balance sheet. So they had a balance sheet of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities of about $1 billion and before the crisis in 07-08. And because of their quantitative easing, their balance sheet grew to $4.5 trillion from $1 trillion. So it grew a lot, and now they're finally going to start winding down that balance sheet. They're going to stop buying bonds. So one of the major buyers in the market is now coming out of the market, and the traditional buyers of bonds, think of institutions, pension funds, are going to have to soak up that extra supply. So that's probably going to result in bond prices dropping and yields increasing. So just another reason that we think interest rates are going to continue to increase in the market. Turning to page 3, you'll see the asset allocation of the portfolio. If you take a look at the left-hand side, you'll see stocks at 55%, bonds at 39%, and cash at 6%. We originally received the funds at the beginning of the year, so it did take a month or so, or a couple of months to build out the portfolio, especially on the fixed income side, where we were looking for appropriate bonds for the portfolio. So we did have a bigger cash position at the beginning of the year, but now we're pretty much fully invested in the portfolio. Looking at the equity diversification, again, you'll see international stocks at 23%. That has expanded compared to a similar portfolio a year ago. And then looking at the fixed income diversification, you'll see we're fully diversified with the core and individual corporate bonds at 55%. You'll see the preferred securities in the orange there at 8%. We like preferreds because they offer a higher yield, especially in this market environment. And then you also see the other bond diversification there in the portfolio as well. Any questions on this page? Yes.
Can you tell me why you think you need to have 6% in cash?
Yes, so the cash position now is, as of yesterday, I believe it was around 3%. So we've continued to put money to work in bonds. It's just a matter of finding the right bonds at the right price for the portfolio. So back at the end of June 30th, we're at 6% cash, but as of yesterday, we're around 3.
Okay, I thought 3 was kind of what we talked about being the goal, so that's why I was just asking, so thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Yes.
So I got a question on your fixed income diversification. You mentioned preferred securities, 8%.
Yes.
What are those?
So preferred securities they're in between a bond and a stock. Typically, a preferred security is going to pay a fixed dividend. A common stock, the dividend can increase. Typically, the preferred, the dividend is higher than a common stock.
So give me a name an example of preferred security.
So any company can issue a preferred. Wells Fargo can issue it, Bank of America, any company out there. It's just a different class of security. So say for example, Wells Fargo, they have common stock. Wells Fargo can issue bonds, corporate bonds, and they can also issue preferred securities. So it's just another security that they can issue, that they have in their toolkit to issue to raise capital.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We turn to page 4. This is the equity analysis. You'll see the top 10 holdings on the right-hand side. Just to give an overview of the equity strategy, it's a dividend growth strategy. So the companies that we're looking for individual companies that pay a dividend, but also pay an increasing dividend. We want to see that dividend increase on a regular basis, thus increasing the income on a regular basis in the account. In addition, we run a high conviction strategy. So it's a strategy that when we're fully invested, we'll have 25 to 30 names in the portfolio. You might see other investment managers with 50 to 75 names. We like to have fewer names so that we know the names better, that we can do a deep analysis of the names. And really the last piece of the strategy is the risk aspect. And that consists of, for every single position, we have what we call as an exit strategy or a stop loss. And that if a stock falls by 25% from its most recent high point, we'll do an official review and likely sell out of the position, locking in the gains or minimizing losses. So what that would look like, the stop loss strategy, say we bought Apple at $50 a share, it did really well, went to 100, but then it dropped to 75. At that point, from dropping from 100 to 75, we would do the official review, most likely sell, locking in the gain from 50 to 75. On the left-hand side, you'll see how your portfolio is constructed compared to the S&P 500 index. Again, this is an active strategy, so you're going to look different from the index. You can see where we're overweight and underweight in the portfolio based on the 11 different sectors there. Any questions on this page?
No, I have one question, not necessarily on this page, but the total cost on the summary sheet for June, what is the effective date of those costs?
Okay, so you're looking at the total cost column?
Yeah.
Well, that date will vary depending on the date that we repurchase each security. So some were purchased earlier in the year, in January and February, and then the bonds really were purchased, we were able to purchase a couple bonds every month from January to now.
It doesn't mean too much to me now, because this is more of a short-term difference. But over time, I would really like to see another column here to show the date of acquisition.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yes, yeah, we can have an acquisition date on there. We can have a sheet that shows that.
That's the only way I can get a meaningful relationship between the value when it was purchased and the value currently, market value. To know how long it's been in the portfolio.
It might also be helpful if you sell something.
Well, I think they've already agreed to put those dates in there, am I correct? Okay.
It's not.
Huh?
But it's
Yeah.
not, that's what I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we can definitely put a report in there that shows the dates. Absolutely. Turning to page 5, the fixed income analysis. So for the core of the fixed income portfolio, we like to use individual bonds. We feel there are several distinct advantages to doing that. With an individual bond, we like to hold it to maturity. So while the price of the bond may fluctuate while we hold it, if we hold it to maturity, we're going to get par value back. The same can be said for a bond mutual fund. There is no maturity date. With the bonds, we're holding shorter maturity bonds because we feel interest rates will increase. And if this interest rates continue to increase, we want the bonds to mature quicker so that we can grab that higher yield. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the maturity schedule of your bond portfolio. So if you added up all those values, all those bars on the left-hand side, that's the value of your total bond portfolio. And we've basically sliced that by the maturity ranges, with the shortest at the top. So you can see the majority of the portfolio is 5 years and less. The greater than 10 years, that's where we stick the preferred securities because they typically do not have a maturity date. You can see some statistics on the bonds below. Average credit rating, investment grade, BBB. Average maturity is under 3 years for the bond portfolio, and the current yield is a touch under 3%, 2.8. Another reason that we stay short, if you look on the right-hand side where it says Treasury and corporate yields, and you look at the Treasury column, you see the 1 year at 1.23%, and then you see the 10 year at 2.38%. It's only about a % difference between the two. So you're going to have to go out an extra 9 years just to grab 1% more yield. We don't feel it's really worth it. We'd like to be compensated more for going out further. So that's another reason why we're staying short. Any questions on page 5?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, one on bonds, again, on the performance statement for portfolio appraisal statement for June, page 3,
Uh-huh.
about halfway down, just before the summary of the bonds.
Yes.
So the two items, one is Citigroup, one is LKQ Corporation.
Yes.
One matures in 2020, one matures 2023. They're both about the same total purchase value. Going to the annual income, there's $340 on the Citigroup and $950 on the other one. One is at 1.7%, the other is 4.7%. Why wouldn't you combine that into one item, LKQ Corporation, and get the $600 extra per year income?
Well, so when we're building out a bond portfolio, there's a lot of factors that go into it. The bonds that you can get in the bond market, it changes every single day. Some bonds you can get a good price one day and the next day, the price isn't that favorable. So it's just a matter of what we're seeing in the market at the time, and it's also spreading out the credit rating as well, too. Some bonds we're going to want to have a higher credit rating on. Some are going to be a little lower, but when we average all the bonds together, we want to get that investment grade. So it's a bunch of different factors that go into building the portfolio, and we don't want to overweight one bond, so we don't have too much in any one bond, just for diversification purposes as well too. So it's really a multiple of factors that take place with building out the whole portfolio. So we're looking at it on a whole portfolio level. Any other questions on the fixed income? If we go back to page 6, the performance. So we've broken out the performance into 3 different sections. At the top, you'll see the performance for the total account. That includes the stocks, the bonds, the cash, the whole portfolio. And then we've also broken out the stocks and the bonds below that. The performance of the town is in bold, and then the benchmark, for comparison purposes, is below it. Just looking at the performance, so we have the year-to-date numbers, the 5.89 versus the 6.88. Really, that lag there is due to getting the funds fully invested. So there was a bit of a time period where we had to put all the money to work. So really, that's the reason for the disparity in the difference. Looking at the stocks, holding more international names did benefit the portfolio. 10.55% versus, you can see the S&P, which is US, and then the MSCI index, which is international. And then with the fixed income, the outperformance helped with being in shorter bonds, shorter maturity bonds. Any questions on the performance?
Question?
Sure.
Total client portfolio, 5.89%. How does that relate to the 2.6% on page 4 of this portfolio analysis?
5.89 is portfolio value, isn't it?
So you're
Not income?
correct. So the
Value.
page 4 is referring to just one part of your, on page 4 of the portfolio appraisal, in the lower right-hand side, you'll see the estimated annual income. So this is forward-looking of $30,830, roughly a 2.6% yield. So that's part of the return. So that'd be the income portion of the return, and then you have the growth portion, or the appreciation of the account.
Okay,
So you have the growth and the income to get your total return.
okay. Got it.
Well, that 5.89 is a combination of income and growth?
Correct. That is correct.
Is that annualized?
That is not annualized, so that's 5.89 for the 6 months.
Right. If it continued at that rate, it'd be about 12 for the year.
Correct, so exactly, it'd be about 12% performance if we had the same results the second 6 months as the first.
With about 2.5% of income and the rest of it growth?
Correct. Yep. Exactly. Getting into the, if you turn the page to the portfolio appraisal, you'll see all the names that we hold in the portfolio on the left-hand side, starting with the common stocks or the equities. On the right-hand side, you can see the estimated annual income that they'll produce and the current yield. Turning to page 2 of the portfolio appraisal, you'll see the information technology, you'll see the rest of the common stocks in the portfolio, and then we get into the cash and equivalents piece in the portfolio, which here it's showing at 6. Again, that's down around 3 now. I just like to point out also that the cash is yielding a little over 1% now. If If you look at the unit income column, it's about 1.1% cash yield. So that has been increasing on a regular basis, and if the Fed continues to raise rates, that should continue to increase. It is still low on an absolute level, but at least it's heading in the right direction. This month in August, that should be around 1.2%. So it's continuing to head higher. And then we get into the corporate bonds in the portfolio. They're arranged by maturity. So the ones that are going to mature the soonest are at the top, and then the ones with the longest maturities are towards the bottom. Turning to page 3, that's where you'll see the rest of the corporate bonds. Then we get into the preferred securities. So you can see we own Bank of America, Equity Commonwealth, and Wells Fargo in the preferreds. Again, we like them for the yields. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see combined they're yielding about 6%, which is good for this, especially for this market environment. And then we get into some of the funds, the fixed income funds that we hold. And then on page 4, we get to the final market value of the account, $1,174,000 as of the end of the second quarter. Any questions on the portfolio appraisal? Turning the page to the portfolio activity summary. I like this page because it just gives you a nice quick snapshot of what's going on in the portfolio over the past 6 months since the beginning of the year. You can see the starting value, the contributions, the funds that came into the account, the withdrawals, and then the realized and unrealized gains and losses. So that's the growth in the portfolio, or the appreciation. The interest and the dividends is the income earned. And if you add those two together, you get your total return for the period in dollar values. And then you also see the change in accrued interest, portfolio fees, and then again, the ending dollar value. Any questions on that page?
Questions from the board?
I do have another question.
Sure.
Would it be possible for you to add a page that shows the breakdown of the individual accounts, just summarized in the portfolio? You follow what I'm saying?
Like the spreadsheet that we provide that has like different funds.
Right, in other words, because this is one trust fund with multiple sub-funds,
Yes.
and if we could have just their individual value and,
That's what you're talking about, I think.
correct,
Yep, yes, absolutely we can.
and this is as of June 30th, yeah.
Yep.
I get that. Perfect, thank you.
Yep,
Any
we
more
can have
questions,
that.
please? No questions? Bar Harbor, thank you so much for coming in and giving us a report. Looks great to me.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yep. Good report. Mid-Maine Chamber.
Yes, just as an introduction, Kim Lindholm stopped by one day, and she wants to try to raise the awareness of the Mid-Chamber of Commerce amongst municipalities, so she asked whether or not she could make a presentation, a brief presentation to the board. I thought it might be useful, and so that's why she's here.
Hey, thanks again.
Thank you.
Drive safely, huh?
Thank you.
See you next quarter.
So Gary, I've determined you run a tight ship here, so my challenge is going to be in brevity, trying to be brief, so you'll keep me on
It's a
track.
wonderful thing.
You're going to keep me on track, right?
It's a wonderful thing.
So, my name is Kim Lindloff. I've been with the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce for a little over 16 years in my current capacity, and we are the Chamber of Commerce that represents Belgrade Lakes, and 18 other municipalities in the Mid-Maine region. We do things that normal chambers of commerce do when you think of a chamber of commerce, promoting tourism. It's one of our major functions. And we represent approximately 700 businesses and nonprofits in the region. So we do things like what Michael's pulling out there now. We have a street map of our area municipalities. You guys are on the back side. We do the Belgrade Lakes. We started that, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago due to demand. One of the major reasons tourists come to our region is to come here to the Belgrade Lakes. And so we have Waterville Winslow on the front side, and then on the back, we have Belgrade and China, and we have a close-up of Oakland Fairfield. Quite frankly, as far as support goes, all the people that advertise on that are chamber members. The only municipality on that isn't a financial supporter of the chamber is Belgrade. But we feel it's a value to our members and to the tourists coming to the region. We produce that every other year. We just printed it in January. We printed 10,000 copies, and we do provide them here at the office. The other piece that's in there as far as tourism marketing goes is our guidebook. We'll be producing that shortly. It'll be printed for January 1 of 18, and we produce 20,000 copies of that, and we distribute it throughout the state in every single tourist rest stop. It also goes in all the hotels, motels in our region that are chamber members. Then we send it out to people inquiring about the region. We provide it to our members. So it gets a very big, it gets out there. We usually run out by the end of the 2-year cycle. So one of the things that I specifically talked to Denny about was our efforts over the past 3 years with bass fishing. We were approached a few years ago by Major League Fishing Summit Cup. They sent scouts up. We worked with them to secure them to come to our region. They taped 7 2-hour programs and then a grand finale. The 7 2-hour programs aired on Outdoor Channel, and then the grand finale aired on a Saturday in sports prime time on CBS and had 1.3 million viewers. So that was pretty phenomenal. I think it literally put our region on the map. We get lots of calls now from people interested in bass fishing. The year after that, or that fall, so that aired in the spring. Grand finale was in May. During the sweeps in the fall, Fishing University came up. They heard about the great bass fishing in the area, and they taped a half-hour program on China Lake, and that aired also on the Outdoor Channel. Since then, we've been approached by other television shows, but we've realized that we're onto something here, that we really do have spectacular bass fishing, some of the best in New England. I had sent an email to Denny about Bassmaster Magazine, has listed, come on, it's okay. Listed Great Pond, Weber, and China Lake in its top 25 lakes in New England. That was directly related to our efforts, and the call came to the chair of our fishing, unless it's called a fishing subcommittee, because I guess the wives see that in the calendar, they think it's fake. But we really do have a fishing subcommittee as we market our region to fishermen and their families. We just taped 4 more shows. 2 of them were taped right here in Great Pond, Hank Parker's Outdoors. And those will be airing in first quarter of 2018, so when we get the dates, I'll send those to Denny to get out to you. So what I would like to see is more participation from Belgrade in some of the stuff we're doing, because I feel like I'm doing it, and really want to engage you guys and the citizenry here to be more involved in the efforts that we're making to promote your region. We did just have the Belgrade Regional Alliance join, so we're very excited about that. And we're trying to work more with businesses in the area to engage them in their efforts. We've dedicated, for all those TV shows, there's a cost, and we've dedicated about $10,000 a year to this marketing effort, some years a little bit more. We created a logo. We've launched a website separate from the Mid-Maine Chamber's website. We've created 2 TV commercials which can be found on that site. We have video, we have, you can go to that site essentially and find out all the rules and all the regulations. They show it shows each lake where you can launch your boat. Information that anybody just coming here would need to know about, okay, which pond or lake do I fish on? How do I get my stickers? How do I get my boat in? It's all there. We've tried to make a really comprehensive website, and most of our marketing has been geared towards educating people and trying to get them engaged in fishing. We have a local lunkers page on that site where people can post their fish and where they caught them and how much they weighed, and that's a lot of fun. That draws more and more people to the site, as well as the Facebook page. So we're really trying to market Belgrade and the rest of Mid-Maine as the place to go to in New England for exceptional bass fishing. That packet that I gave each of you goes through a lot more benefits than just this. This is something new that we're launching. We also did a half-page ad in the state's publication, Maine Invites You. That goes to 300,000 tourists annually. I until a month ago, chaired the board of the Kennebec Valley Tourism Council, which does the marketing for our tourism region, which goes from Jackson to about Gardner. So now I'm past chair. Actually, now I'm treasurer. We bounce around a lot. So we continue to market this region, and if you guys were to consider joining and teaming up with us and helping us market your region more heavily, we would give you an insert in our newsletter that you could use to market whatever events or whatever you have going on in town. We would do that for free. You would also get a $600 package for advertising on the Cruisin' 93.5. That's for the first year. We have a website that has an events calendar on it. The town can post all of its events and things that are coming up on that as a member of our chamber. You could also post jobs if you have job openings there. If you have any special deals going on, you can post those as well. So there are a lot of benefits of getting involved in the chamber. But I think the biggest one, and the one I wanted to talk to you about, is the efforts we're making to promote your community for bass fishermen.
And the cost to join is for,
Well, we figured that out, Denny and I figured it out. It's based on number of full-time or full-time equivalents. And I think you guys are in like the 11, were you in the 11 to 20 or the 12?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so 11 to
Full-time
20 is
equivalents.
$390 a year,
how much?
$390 a year.
$390 a year?
Yeah.
What is the FTE? What,
Full-time equivalents? I don't know the exact, but we have like 30 part-time firemen. We have some other part-timers. We have 8
Oh, you
full-timers.
took-
So we,
so you're talking town employees?
right, right.
Okay,
If you want to get more money, you can. That would be the minimum.
of course.
Which actually some communities do, but I'll start with the minimum.
Board members, questions, comments?
What'll it cost not to publicize bass fishing?
Well, I've opened a can of worms, no pun intended.
I always used to call it farmer fishing. No, I mean, it's, a lot of us remember the days when salmon were king out here. It's unfortunate it's not here anymore, so.
Yeah, and I get that. We were rolling with the asset that was presented to us, this is what we have, so I get it.
Denny?
Just to point out, I sent out an article, it was in a local publication, I can't remember where, that indicated that Great Pond was number 15 in.
That's Bassmaster, July, August issue.
Right. So that certainly was good publicity, depending on your viewpoint about bass.
I mean, our mission is to help businesses grow. I mean, that's why we're here, that's why we exist. We've been around for over 100 years, and having tourists come to the region helps businesses grow.
Questions? No more? I think, yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
With our membership, you say we get, what would you say, $600 worth of?
Yep. It's in the trifold piece in the front,
Right here?
why you should join, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
You would get a free insert in our In Touch newsletter, and there's an example of an In Touch newsletter in there too. That goes out to about 2,500 people a month.
The In Touch? And so how much money would we be in that? Or?
You would be, if you did an insert, you would be in it that 1 month. So if and when you were to join, you would get, Town of Belgrade, your contact information listed as a new member. That would be both in the In Touch and in the Morning Sentinel and on our On Hold. And then you would get the opportunity to do one insert for free.
And what's the radio thing you're talking about?
So the radio is at Cruising 93.5. They do commercials. I think some of it's online and some of it's live on Cruising
So
93.5.
a commercial, come to Belgrade,
Yeah, but whatever you want it to be.
whatever, yeah.
Christmas stroll, fireworks, whatever.
Well, it's a plus, I guess.
Well, I think certainly from my point of view, I'd like to look over this stuff, and
Oh, yeah.
and I think we get Denny to bring this up at a later meeting so we can rediscuss it after we've had a chance to
Yeah.
look at the materials we've got. Do I see agreement there?
Yes.
My card is in every single one of your packets. I have
Thank you
cell
very
phone
much.
too,
Yeah.
So give me a holler if you have any questions. And yeah, I'd be happy
Got
to,
a
you know,
question?
come back if you want, whatever.
Yeah.
The question in the audience.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I got a question on the winter, off-season sports around here. For example, like snowmobiling, cross-country skiing. Do you focus on that at all? Or-
So that's in our guidebook a little bit, but I'll be honest with you, we don't have a ton of information on that. I think mostly our winter skiing and snowmobiling, a little bit is on Quarry Road.
Right.
But we don't have a lot of, we do have a page on snowmobiling and a page on winter activities, but not a ton. So like I said, we're about to publish that again. If you've got information,
I just brought it up because we have snowmobiling clubs around here.
Yep.
There's a lot of local stuff.
Mhm.
Cross-country.
we try to profile that in the Explorer magazine that the Tourism Council does too. I don't know if you're familiar with that piece, but we're always trying to get information so we can populate that as well.
Jack?
Question, Kim, what are the ground rules for representation on your board?
To be on our board, you have to get voted on by our membership. To get on the ballot, to be voted on for membership, we basically look at who's joining our committees and who's proving themselves to be a doer. So it's very rare that we say, oh, we're going to take that CEO and put them on our board. It's usually people who have started on committees, proven themselves, and you have to be a chamber member to be on a committee.
Thank you.
You have a question in the back? Go ahead, please.
How many communities are in Maine,
Mid-Maine Chamber, 19.
and how many participate?
How many pay?
How many pay?
Waterville, Winslow, Fairfield, Oakland, Benton, China, thank you. Pittsfield, who isn't even a member, pays. They pay because they want to put their events, their egg festival and their job fairs and stuff on our calendar, so they pay even though they aren't even in our region. Yeah, so those 7.
Thank you.
Now, China represents China, South China, and Weeks Mills. Fairfield represents Fairfield, Hinckley, and Shawmut. So, I mean, you can count those 3 times each, but,
And would those 3 be counted as part of the 19?
mm,
Okay, so add another 6 to the 7,
Yeah.
so 13 and 19?
yeah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You did it, Gary, you got me out.
I did.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, I'm headed home because I have the taste tomorrow.
Drive
so
careful.
Okay.
See you later.
Take care. We have a request for a reconsideration vote on the traffic and parking ordinance. Mike Barrett wanted that reconsidered. Since last time we voted 2-2, which killed it at that point in time. Michael, do you have,
Yeah,
want to present this?
I would like to move that it be put before the board again at the next meeting for adoption. The reason being is that, as you mentioned, it was a 2-2 vote. We did not have the full board here at the time, and really, in my opinion, nothing was really solved, nothing was really determined. It just kind of died. So I'd like to have it reconsidered. I'd like to have it, the ordinance as proposed, brought before the board again for a vote.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second, please?
Second.
I have, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor, please.
Discussion?
Discussion, I'm sorry. Lost my head momentarily. Go ahead.
What was this discussion on the traffic and ordinance? What was that about? We considered traffic and parking.
We had voted on using a traffic and parking ordinance, developing one. We had one developed, as a matter of fact. The vote was 2-2. which means that it dies at that point. We can legally have it brought back up, which it just was, but it's an ordinance that will go into effect and affect Belgrade as far as parking goes, basically.
But doesn't the state have a rule over that?
State probably does have rules. Dennis?
No, the local municipalities have explicit control over traffic parking and other traffic regulations in their community.
I was told years back, that being a state highway, if the state wanted to,
Well,
there's no parking on it at all.
If the state wanted it on the state highway, we have a lot more roads than 27 or Castle, I think it's Castle Mountain.
Bernie?
I just, again, we had a pretty good group of people during the hearing the last time. And my view, and I know this isn't, it'll have to be discussed again at another public hearing, but people that have lived in this town a long time, most of the residents in this town do not like new ordinances. They don't like new regulations.
Right.
And it's, we've had parades. How many years has the town had parades, shut the roads down, do their local functions? We've never had any issues, and we haven't had to have an ordinance to conduct these functions. So now, based on the fact that the board has been told that they can do this, and we had, as far as I know, we had a complaint up at our place on Long Pond, the park on Long Pond, where the beach is up there on Long Pond, which I believe was resolved. That kind of initiated because we had a complaint. To me, as a board member, representing you, the voters, or the residents, I shouldn't say the voters, any resident in this town, I feel that it's very inappropriate for this board to do an ordinance and there's really no serious problem. The serious problem that we did do an ordinance on was they had the bands up in the lakes area, in a gravel pit. There was many complaints about that. So we ended up being forced really to do an ordinance, mass gathering ordinance, which then impacts other events in town, which it wasn't supposed to. So here we go again. We're going to do an ordinance because the select board feels it's important to do that. And,
No.
well, it's just, we're the ones that decide whether it's going to be that ordinance or not, which I think is very unfortunate because the voters could potentially vote and say, no, we don't want it. We can just say, yes, you're going to have it. I don't like that type of business, and I think most of the people in this town, and this is my opinion, don't care for that type of business. This town has been run this way for how many years?
Years.
This is the way life should be, or we want to change it, you know? And that really bothers me.
I don't like to tell you the town changed, period. I like the way it was when I first came here.
Well, we have a great community. We really have a good select board, and we disagree on some things. And this is one thing I really seriously disagree on, because I am here to represent not how I feel, but I know how the people in this town feel, and they're not going to like this ordinance if it was to be authorized by this board. And there's no real issue. One of the arguments that was thrown out is that we could have legal problems. Well, we've got ordinances that we still have legal problems. That's not, we are protected. State law protects us, home rule protects us, and there are other rules that protect us. And the town has run fantastic for how many years?
Years and years.
Now we want to change it.
Denny?
That's my argument.
Well, I'm not arguing, I'm just pointing out, my role was to, when the issues came up, there were some questions asked about whether or not we could tow the vehicle and all of that, and then there was a road closure issue that came up. And my role is to look at the law, tell you what you can or can't do. You can do what you want, obviously, but I was just looking at the legality and providing my advice to you. So it's not that I'm arguing
or whatever. And right now, it's just that I provided the best advice I can to you, and that's it. You get to vote on what you want to vote on, or I suppose you could actually put this ordinance out to the locals if you wanted to. I mean, well, you have exclusive authority, but under home rule, I assume that you could actually put this out under.
The law specifically says it's the domain, exclusive domain of the
Exactly.
select board.
Right, and if the select,
What he's saying is, as a select board, we could say,
We could
it's
ask.
gonna go out to the voters.
yeah.
Yeah. But the final decision has to be the select board's.
Ernie?
I just have one last thing. The laws of this state have been on the books for years and years and years. All these rules have been on the books for years and years and years, and the locals have had a great time enjoying their life in Belgrade. Now, if we pass this, if this gets actually approved, move forward and then gets approved, there's a couple rules and regulations that will be thrown at you. And you know what? It's gonna cost us money, because if we could call somebody up to enforce that, then he can't go write a ticket. Then he can, if we pass it and we say, we put a sign up, your vehicle can be towed, well, we can have the vehicle towed, but if we send the code enforcement up there, we gotta pay him, we gotta pay mileage, there's an expense to that. Anything we do like this, there's an expense to, and then you have to enforce it. It's, what has changed? We had an issue, we dealt with it, it was fixed. As far as I know, it's been fixed.
No, actually, the parking issue has not been fixed, we just haven't done it.
I know with the parking the way it is, it
If I
slows
can.
everybody right down.
Okay.
Don't have any problem.
Rick?
Well, just the last couple weeks, I've been going up there different times of day, night. Hadn't been a car there. I drove in there and go, what are we talking about? There's nothing there. I went there, see, it was, let me think. Saturday night, it was probably 9:30, 10 o'clock, I drove up there. Not a car there. And the thing that really makes me mad about this most, we had one complaint, written complaint, one. And we jumped all over it. I just don't understand it, you know? People came here because they were dealing with this crap where they were. Now we're gonna put it in front of them again. You know, I'm sorry, I just do not agree with it. Again, and Ernie's right. How are we gonna enforce it? Then you can go out and leave a little note on the car? Costs money. I don't care, you're not gonna do it for nothing. Well, and if you send a code, you're not.
I hear what you're saying.
You're not authorized to do that. I don't care what that says.
If you were to pass it.
If I was to pass it, I'm not gonna, I've got another plan. So, go ahead and do what you want.
I have just one more.
Go ahead.
The only reason I'm going on with this bill, Ernie wasn't here, and I just hope he listens to what has been just said, and that he realize, he's been around Belgrade a long time, and he knows the people, and there's no need for this. That's all. Just, he's the deciding vote tonight to whether we move it forward or not, and I think it should be killed right here tonight.
Michael?
You know, I hear what you're all saying, but all it takes is a trip some Sunday morning in July down Route 27 in the village to know that there are some needs for something to be done. That's a major concern. You have days, and those days, you couldn't get an emergency vehicle down that road. And whether or not we immediately enforce parking is a separate question, really. We had said we wanted this on the books in case an issue arose. We would have the tools to do something with it. I frankly don't see immediately, certainly not immediately, maybe not for a long time, the town running down there and enforcing parking, towing cars. There are a couple, one or two places where it might come to the foe and that floor, and that's the parking down by the dry hydrant. I mean, that's something that would have to be handled quickly.
If we had the ordinance, Mike, that would
If
be
we
in
had
my
the ordinance,
mistake.
that's what I'm saying, is that was the original, that was the discussion why this ordinance should go into effect. So we have the tool to use if the situation arises.
I'd like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
Well, 27 is a state highway. If there's an issue up there, town manager calls the state police, or the sheriff's department, they go deal with it. That's a state highway. And you know what? That fire hydrant, that's a state law. You cannot park in front of the fire hydrant. We don't need no ordinance to enforce it. That is an absolute fact. That's gonna have we're gonna have a brand-new highway up through there. It's gonna be roughly 4 feet wider than it is now. And we're gonna actually there's no legal parking up there right now. We're gonna have roughly, what was it, 50, 40s?
70-something.
Well, we're gonna have a whole bunch of parking places up there. And, you
As I
know,
remember, we'll have less parking when they get done than we have now. By about three
Maybe it
spaces.
went from 70 down. I don't know.
yeah, but we don't have any legal parking places right now.
Yeah, you're right.
You're gonna have a lot of wider place for them to park too. It's gonna be
Yeah.
more room.
But it's just, all I'm saying is, you know, again, that's a state highway. It's gonna be rebuilt, and we're gonna have everything laid out, and hopefully, it's gonna be much better. But you can ride around this state to communities very similar to ours. They have the same problem, and they love it because it's the people that we want to, this is what that's all about up there. We want them to come to our special village up here, but yet now we want ordinances just in case. And I just think, when the time comes and we need it, let's do it then.
Michael?
My understanding of the reason for making this motion today is to put it out so the town could be aware it's coming up. And we're gonna have to have a meeting for the townspeople to express their opinion. And we're really getting out ahead of ourselves right now. So I move that we just.
Well, it's already, we have a motion on the floor, it's been seconded.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of moving this ahead to the next meeting? Opposed? 3-2, moves ahead. Shoreland zoning discussion or ordinance change.
Right. If I can, I think Peter came in and talked about the issue, and I guess there was another person that you were talking about that would come in and talk about the issue of why wasn't the Belgrade shoreline zoning ordinance, which we adopted, changed
You guys
back
have a letter. Yeah.
since 2013. Why wasn't that
Rick, it was a
essentially given
separate
the priority?
Yeah, I got it.
So.
I'm just shaking my head from disappointment.
He indicated that he wanted to come in with another individual and talk about it, and have that aired out in front of the board, and I've put that on the agenda, and I think Peter, the planning board, is here, and I also forwarded you an email today that George Seal wrote, just in case Peter couldn't make it, I guess, but that kind of give you the history behind it. So.
Peter?
Okay, I just, you got a copy of them, I got it to Dennis this afternoon late, and I'll just read my introduction. I'm addressing the selectman as an owner of shorefront property rather than a planning board member, because I am frustrated with the timeline of implementing the new shoreline zoning ordinance. Within our Belgrade Lakes watershed, 2 towns have already adopted this new ordinance. Town of Smithfield, in the first quarter of 2015, regulates North Pond and East Pond. And Town of Rome, in the first quarter of 2017, and they regulate northern portions of Great Pond and Long Pond. So the issue is, where is the Town of Belgrade in this implementation process? According to the DEP Spring 2015 Shoreline Zoning News, the commissioner announced the new ordinance became effective January 26, 2015. I've done a cursory review of Smithfield's and Rome shoreline ordinances, and they are identical and they emulate the 2015 Model Act. As a point of information, they have posted on their town's websites. Also, I invited other shorefront property owners to this evening meeting as they are curious about when the ordinance will be in place so they comply with the building expansion permits. That's the reason I'm here, and I gave Dennis a bunch of material a couple weeks ago. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. So, you know, I was here maybe about, wait, a year ago, 2 years ago, and addressed the select board at that time, that this ordinance was coming down the pike, was here, and, you know, then you gave direction to the planning board to go ahead and implement it, and we've been working on it a little bit, but it's going at a snail's pace. So I'm looking for, as a property owner, I'm looking for, a timeline, what's going on. Hopefully some of the, I don't see the people that I invited here. Oh, Rich, I'm sorry, you're here. You're sitting behind me. And so that's, where I'm coming from. I kind of like to hear a discussion about it among the people, what your thoughts are.
Peter,
Yes,
you want to address that, please?
I'll do my very best. As you have probably seen the summary from George Seal when he responded to an inquiry from Denny, he outlined very well our work priorities as they exist now. Also, keeping in mind, we have been working prior to now. We had worked on revising the commercial review ordinance. That took us significant effort. So we're resource constrained in a volunteer organization and we're doing the best we can with a small number of people. I hear Pete's frustration. I do. I enjoy working with Pete on the planning board, and I'm hoping that we can continue to make some progress on this. The last little bit I would offer too is that we were charged by you folks after consulting with you about the sign ordinance, and that's too is part of the mix. So you look at applications that come before us, the work we've done on the commercial review ordinance, the sign ordinance discussions, and the planning, the shoreline zoning work, and we're trying to make the best progress we can.
Board members, comments?
Well, I think, again, the only comment I have is it's the state of Maine saw fit to change this ordinance to the 2015. And it was effective at the beginning of the year in 2015. And since it seems to be beneficial to property owners along a valuable shoreline that we want to rake in all the tax dollars from, it seems like maybe we should be really looking at that and see if there's some real benefits to the people that do own properties there that can be, sounds like they can improve their properties, which would increase our revenue. That's what it sounds like. That's the basis from what I'm hearing. I did read through the ordinance somewhat, and it definitely clearly makes it so that people can do some improvements to their properties and still be within compliance, but we have to bring our ordinance up to date to do that. So,
Peter, have you looked at Smithfield's and Rome's ordinances?
We have a little bit. Pete invited the CEO from Smithfield to come in, right? Pete, we had Mr. Marble came in, and he talked about their process when they amended or revised their shoreline zoning ordinance. So that gave us a little bit of a shot in the arm about how much it might take to get it done. They zinged right through it, to be quite frank. They did a great job. So we have looked at it, yes, we have here.
What stops us from zinging right through it?
Yeah, workload.
Workload, just everything that you stated. So, in your estimation, it could be years before we get to this. Could be months, could be, who knows?
I suppose it could be years. I do not think that at all. I would like to think you'd be ready for November.
This November?
Or, it's already, no. How about March?
The reason why, March of what year?
Yeah, not this November, yeah.
The reason why I said that was because there are other ordinance changes that you've looked at, and I don't know if you're going to public hearing, if those are not.
We want to
The
make sure-
transfer station ordinance and,
We wanted to get to the timeline that would allow for public hearings and so on, and publications, so, I'm sorry, March.
So to zing right through it, we've got to have, still have public hearings and so on.
Just one at a time, please, one at a time. Go ahead, Ernie.
Well, he answered my question.
Okay. Rick?
I just don't know why we don't put the signs on the back burner, and maybe move forward with this. I think there's a lot more people who's got shoreline property and is worried about a sign in Belgrade Lakes. That's my thoughts on the whole thing.
Please.
Hi, Richard Sampson. I have a small camp on Great Pond, and I've lived there for 8 years, and 720 square feet. Love it, but I have 4 kids, so it's been a tight squeeze for 8 years. And, so we'd like to sell the house in Waterville and move to Great Pond, but so as you know, the codes were changed to eliminate the 30% expansion rule. And a lot of the old lots on Great Pond were small 50 to 75 foot lots, crowded and close to the water. And so the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, what they did with their Title 38 MRSA 439A is to eliminate the volume restriction, which is really complicated because you have to measure the knee walls and the heights of the upper stories, and volume just presents a more complicated picture. So to simplify it, we wouldn't have to change the height restrictions at all. So we still have the same height restrictions at each setback from the water that we have now. So all it would do would be allow you to squeeze in a second floor possibly if you can fit it under the height restrictions. But in addition to that, it gives the homeowner the possibility of a 30% expansion, which in a 700 square foot house, I kind of need that as well. But instead of the old 30% expansion, you don't have to calculate the volume, which really was the complicating factor, I think, in all of this when we changed our rules. And I forget what year Belgrade changed the 30% rule. But so in the most recent issue of the Shoreland Zoning News Update, the state offers this. They say, the department strongly urges municipalities to amend their local ordinances in a manner that is consistent with current state law to try to bring the whole state into a similar shoreline zoning for lakefront. Consistency between local ordinances and state law will provide clarity to the property owners and the code enforcement officers. They also say that we're here to help. Basically, we've written the language. We can help zip this through.
Government's telling you that?
Yeah.
They're here to help, huh?
They say Mike Morris will help you in southern Maine, Colin Clark will help you in central Maine, and Don Abbott in northern Maine. So they say, if you'd like us to review it before it goes up for adoption, we'd love to help. So they have the language written. They're there to help. I think it shouldn't be too difficult. 1/3 to half of Great Pond already passed it. So there's already homeowners that are able to take advantage of this, expand their little camps, squeeze a second floor in, put some dormers, whatever it takes to make it a full-time house. I think, the benefit besides increased tax revenue is perhaps, depending on what our septic rules are, but, perhaps if you have a 1950 camp, you have a 1950 septic system that's not in the best shape. Maybe if you're adding bedrooms, you're going to need a new septic system. There's some thought that up to 25% of lake pollution is caused by poor old septic systems. So maybe we get more water clarity out of improved septic systems. And hey, while you're doing that, what are you going to do about gutters? Let's turn around that runoff and run it back on the property instead of into the lake. And what's the shorefront look like? Is it flat with water running into the lake or not? So maybe some increased water protection actually comes along with a little bit of development. Not to mention jobs, labor, tax base, and bring people in. So I'd love to move out here full time. My hands are a little bit tied right now. And I see, a good section of Great Pond already adopting what the state thinks is a good rule. And so I think if we can get some town meetings and public hearings scheduled, you know, I think the language is already written, so I don't think it should be all that difficult.
Thank you.
And I brought another homeowner with me who is anxiously awaiting the same rules. And also,
You know,
thanks.
Peter?
I did want to take a couple minutes to say, the couple of folks from DEP that you mentioned that are here to help, they are here to help. So I know there was some chuckles about it, but they are excellent employees, and they do an excellent job. In addition, on the planning board, we have excellent resources as well. Rich Baker wrote the book, so there's probably no better resource in the state. So to give credibility to the efforts that we're doing, just want you to know we are well-staffed. It's a matter of priorities, and make it happen.
Yeah, Howard.
I would voice my concern that if the language is already written, the state guidelines are what has been used by the other towns. It doesn't sound like much more than a public hearing is all it's going to take to process the thing through.
Peter?
yeah, what's it gonna take?
Yeah, that's a good question, yes.
Yeah, I would like to,
No, go ahead. Yep, you.
Yeah, I would anticipate that with just a little bit of work, we wouldn't have to rewrite much at all, Howard, with this. Adopt most of the language in where possible, add clarity to our current ordinance, reduce conflicts. There's a little bit of work that has to be done with that in one section of the ordinance that currently exists as compared to the other. And make sure that we also identify things that specifically for the comprehensive plan, there were several things that were outlined that taxpayers, people of Belgrade, told us that they needed to have addressed. So we need to make sure those are also addressed.
Peter?
Let's see, Smithfield, they put it through in the first quarter of 2015, and they had started working on it in the last quarter of the prior year. So, you know, that's at the most 6 months, okay? And then Rome, I know, talking to one of the planning board members about 3 months ago, we didn't have a clue that there was a change in, in the shoreline zoning. And then within a few months, it was done. So, it kind of gives you an idea.
It certainly sounds to me like this is something we've got to get done expeditiously. Am I correct, board?
I would say, yeah.
It just seems to me that we should be shooting for the earliest possible date on this. Next week.
Well, we have an opening on the 4th, so join, happy to have it.
Michael?
Peter Rushton. If we gave you the guidance, I like in this case, I like Rick's suggestion about putting the sign ordinance on the back burner. If that was taken off your back, would you be able to work quicker on the shoreline zoning?
I do believe in answer to that question, yes. The answer would be yes.
Then I'll make that motion, we do that.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded that we, now, okay, moved and seconded that we
Move the sign
put the sign on
ordinance to
the
the back
back
of the
burner. Any more discussion on that? All those in favor? Move it to the back burner.
I just want to thank Peter and all of those volunteers on that committee and every other committee for the hard work they do, because they're taking of their own time, and they're trying to do the best they can for the town. And I personally appreciate that, Peter, as I know the board does.
They do a great job.
I'd like to just insert one thing. I know that we have water quality issues that are going down. So, and I know these people for sure are gonna make sure, like he's saying, let's look at that septic system and the code is gonna be, I'm sure if you add more, a couple of bedrooms, it's gonna, and I think that's probably a very positive thing when you start having to upgrade your small lot size and put in a better quality septic system. So I see a real that was just really good information, and it's good to hear the landowners can see what's happening and are aware of it, because the more those people know, the better.
Absolutely. You know, the more we have engaged citizenry,
Yep.
we're all better off.
I mean, to enlighten that a little bit more too, Peter, I mean, even engineers now, when they're having these systems designed, 9 times out of 10, they're bigger than what they were, what was already in them. So they're looking out for the best interest of the.
They've learned COVID design, too.
Oh, no question.
Okay, gentlemen, we're gonna go on to the next item, which is salt bids. Mr. Kenchel.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we went to both the Maine DOT and the KV cog to ask them, when they went out to bid, we put a particular tonnage in for
Thank
the
you,
salt
Peter.
that we wanted. Should we select that bid?
You guys.
So the bids came back, and they both came back from New England Salt Company. So I brought this to the road committee, and we looked at the two bids. One was $56.20 from New England Salt through the Maine DOT, and the other was $55 per ton of salt. Based on the way the area is, I assume that the bids went out. The second bid from KV cog was $55 per ton for Belgrade in this area. So the road committee asked me to recommend to you to accept the $5 ton per ton price for salt versus the $56.20, since it's virtually going to come from the same company, so lower price.
Is this the company that David wanted to deal with?
David was at the, I don't know if this was exactly, maybe it was, the company that had a bad salt batch, but he thinks that came as a reject from the state. So that, I told him, I said, if you get that again, reject it, or I'll go up and reject it. But my understanding is that they've solved that complaint problem, at least talking to DOT, New England Salt, that particular problem was solved.
I got one more question, though. Does Kennebec Valley Cog charge us anything for doing this bid?
Well, other than we belong
Paid our
to.
dues.
Well, and why I'm bringing this up is I was looking at another town online that was having a select board meeting, and there was a charge for them doing that. for them.
We don't.
It may
'Cause
have
we're a
been
member.
It was another county, it wasn't Kennebec, so,
It may be that they're not members of KV cog, too.
they were. Because that was a question.
I have no idea.
Okay,
'Cause
I just wanted to make
It
sure.
came with no charges.
Nope.
from,
Okay, that's fine.
The information I got.
I'll make a motion, we accept that.
And I'll second it. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Can I have the warrant, please?
Warrant.
Attorney, can you do me the honor? Thank you.
Warrant number 94, $1,169,440.68.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to
Second that.
accept that?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Moving to second, and we accept that. Any discussion on it?
Yes, if I can find my damn word.
How's it going?
No, I've got one that's marked up.
Got another one here. Well, you open this mic up.
I can find it.
I got one on page number 3.
Page number 3. What's the check number?
What's that?
Check number.
What's the check number?
Where is the check number on?
1/3 with the comma.
Over here? 427.
427.
It was a hoist load plan. What is that?
Hold on.
It's on your third page. Third one from the bottom.
Right, but I'm looking at the check to see what it was. 1647.
It was G.F. Johnson and Associates. Page number 3.
Page 3, third from the bottom?
Yep.
Well, this is,
G.F. Johnson Associates?
Yes.
Yeah.
Different?
What is it?
Can I see that?
this
That's what I
one's
didn't know what.
different.
Must be on the plan.
This is new, so it is the same location, but you can probably, if it's not.
You said 1647 was the check number, right?
No, 427, I think.
Yeah, 427. That's
Oh,
what I'm
530, okay.
530?
Yeah,
G.F. Johnson Associates?
Yes.
Fifth from the bottom.
1639, I'm sorry. 1659.
For 547,
Yeah,
right?
16,339 is the check number.
Okay, that's the check number, yeah.
Okay, hold on. I got it right here.
37, 38, and 39. Okay, there was an inspection at the transfer station, the hoist that picks up the salt sand and holds it there was found to be defective, so that it didn't have a load rating on it, so they had to get that calculated, and that's what this is for.
Simple solution, put it on the ground.
Any more questions on the warrant, please? Michael?
Number on page 4, number 491, Jordan Lumber Company.
What's the check number?
16,345.
345?
Imagine that's
Oh, yeah,
for the skid steer, I imagine. Jordan equipment, isn't it?
I just wasn't sure what.
Hand lumber?
No, Jordan.
It says a skid unit hose tray from Jordan Lumber. They
Jordan
Oh,
Lumber.
Jordan lumber, I said hand.
That's for the fire department, they own a new brush truck.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, did it come, did
For rescue.
Jordan Lumber build it, or what? Or
They
just-
sell these, yes.
Huh?
They
They
sell
do sell
them.
them, okay, that's all.
apparently, it's, yeah.
That's what I wanted to
That's
know.
where the skid unit came from.
Yep.
Thank you, Richard.
More questions on the warrant, please? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting? And it's,
Pass that back. Okay, you want to sign that?
all right, town manager, but I got something, Denny, can you, before next meeting, sort of do a little research and see what the state has on the books on parking?
Yeah, I've already done that.
Have you done
So
that?
I'll have that. The only thing I haven't done, which I intend to do, is if you were to pass the ordinance on winter
Yeah.
maintenance for the sidewalk, if you were to pass that ordinance, this town has no liability for slips and falls due to ice and snow. That's just in the
Okay.
law. The question came up is what is the responsibility or liability to the property owner that abuts it? So I'm going to check into
On
that.
snow removal?
Yeah.
Well, I have a question on that.
Well, that'll be next meeting.
Next meeting? All right, Denny, you're up.
Okay, hold on, while I get this.
You can look a lot of that up on Title 29 too.
Right, it's all right there.
We don't have any jurisdiction.
Brief, I'm going to give you a brief financial update just because we're a month late in getting our commitment out. Normally you get it out in early July.
Thank you for doing that, Denny.
Yes.
We've in the past, last year we got the first shocker.
Oh, no, I don't want to give you a shocker.
Well, no.
I was giving you a little bit of a shocker, but, you know, we're tracking that on a routine daily basis. I want to know as soon as possible if we have to go out with another tan. I'm trying to let you know that we're running a little bit closer than we were last year, and it was a shocker for you last year. And that's primarily because we went out almost a month late. The tax bills went out today, and so our cash flow we're watching it. But we're concerned, and because we're concerned, I'm going to let you know that you might want to think about that. But we may have to go out with an additional 10. If we do, we can do that within a day or two. The reason why we're watching it closely is because we don't want to expend the extra money from the lawyer that will cost us to do that, unless it's absolutely necessary. So right now, Melanie and I have talked this morning. She's, saying, oh, well, let's hold off. So I'm going to follow up on that on a regular basis, and we're going to meet again next week just to see where we're exactly at. But she's tracking that pretty closely.
Can I give you one little bit of piece of
Sure.
information on that? Because I recall last year when it was brought to our attention, the big thing we held off on was the school.
Now, we're holding both.
Right to the last.
Yeah, we're going to hold that to the last day we have to pay it. And we believe, a lot of people have been calling in, the tax bills went out today, so a lot of people have been calling in this past week saying, when can I pay? I don't call in, but other people do. And it's great that they do because that'll help us. So that's that particular issue. I have two thank you letters here if you want to look at them. They're from a young gentleman that got the scholarship at Vaughn Governor, and from the Litter Street Volunteers, where the town provided $1,000, a donation to that fund. I also got some letters you don't necessarily want. I think you've heard about, because I passed them on to you. John D'Amico is resigning from the library trustee, so we have to look for someone there.
John D'Amico.
D'Amico?
D'Amico.
Yeah. And we also have some vacancies on the appeals board that we need some volunteers for, if we can get there. Since Jay Bradshaw is indicating that he'll be leaving due to personal reasons. And so we also had a resignation from our recreation department. She's leaving for another position closer to home, and we'll be starting that search soon. I just want to let people know, if they haven't heard, that that's there.
You mentioned who it was?
It was Valencia. She was.
Is her committee been notified?
I have sent out
Yeah,
an
okay,
email
good.
letting the committee know and letting them know that I would like to have input on how that process for filling that vacancy worked in the past, and I don't want to step on toes if in fact it isn't working the way I think it should.
I guess I'd like to just give a little input on that. I think the route you're looking to go is probably a good route. That's just my
Okay,
view,
good.
because
Yes.
5 people is a little bit.
No, I don't want to go with 5 people, 3
Well,
people.
that seems to be past history. I'm just saying, I like your thought.
And I'll be meeting with the rec committee just to get their input and make sure that I address the issues that they may have. And we'll have 1 member from the rec committee on that.
5 people on that hiring committee for the town manager was really cumbersome.
Yeah, well, that's,
Okay, and we'll be interviewing for positions for the town clerk, deputy treasurer position starting Tuesday of next week at 4:30, and we'll see how that goes. And I have asked Jack Sutton, Ernie Merkins, and Melody to be on that interview group.
Along with you.
No,
You're not on the committee?
no, I'm not on that interview group because there's a conflict of interest for me. The crack in the salt sand shed, we got 2 bids. One was over 4,600, I think, roughly. The other bid was around 2,700 for 8 cracks that we found in the walls. We're recommending that we go with 1 crack, the one that's leaking right now, and we'll think about the other ones and maybe talk about it during budget season. But we have a bid right now from one person for about $700+, and we're waiting for the bid from the other group to give us for a single thing, and then we got to get that repaired so David can start putting salt sand mix up.
Is it leaking groundwater in?
We're getting water that comes off the roof, hits the back wall, the north side of the wall where that big wall was built up, comes down through there and comes right through the crack. And you can see actually where it runs. So David would like to get that fixed so we don't have a problem with that. I would like to get that fixed so we don't have a problem with that. Okay, you know that there's a meeting about the athletic complex, and the letter is signed today that you asked for me to write, and we'll get that out tomorrow. The meeting will be on August 9th. There's been a flurry of emails that I forwarded to you from various sources that talked about the issue and all of that. So I'll be going to that meeting on the 9th. My understanding is there's going to be an opportunity to make some comments from the pro side, the anti side, if you want to put it that way. I don't look at it that way, but that's how they're, and then 2-minute comments for a period of time. And then, now this is where they're now looking at the absolute kind of safety, handicap accessible issues, combining those with a potential athletic complex issue to see if they, you know, if it fits in that plan. Our concern, as you know, is that it has to fit it within a long-term plan in order to make it at least reasonable or workable. Otherwise, you might be building something that is impacted and we lose taxpayer money. So that's that issue. We did receive back from the state $113,000. It's going to be meted out by reducing our school payment by roughly $12,000 a month. Actually, they held the first payment in July at the same level, and so we'll be reducing our payment by $11,000 a month. So that was good news. There's one issue, and I don't see anyone here that can address it. The state, and this is the issue, the state in their legislation provided for 50% going back to the school and 50% for local tax reduction. That's all. That's what happened, right? My question to the superintendent was, and is, and will be, that, okay, now that, you got 50% of whatever the money was, say $350,000. And you gave $350,000 back to the towns. In our district meeting, in the vote that we took, Article 18 essentially broke down any money that the school got, 50% would go for tax lowering, and 25% would go for educational issues, and then 25% into the undesignated fund. So my question is, would that 50% that they got from the state, which is really money that they got, the other money came back directly to us, would that be something that they, pursuant to Article 18, should then disperse to the local towns? Carl said that he had talked, superintendent said he had talked to Woodsum and the attorneys, I can't remember, Woodsum and, I can't remember.
Drummond and Woodson.
Who?
Drummond and Woodson.
Drummond and Woodson. And to the DOE, and they felt that the 50-50 was an appropriate response to that question. I'm not quite convinced, but I will be pursuing that issue, unless you feel that it's fine.
And that amounts to?
It'll amount to another, probably, the way they did it, maybe another 40,000, something like that.
Well, pursue it.
Yeah. Better than a kick.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a growing issue with unkept properties. I'm not going to mention ordinances. It's the standard. We do have an ordinance. It's called the junkyard and auto graveyard ordinance. It doesn't give us a lot of ability to address issues like the issue on Manchester Road, but we've had several of these issues come up in the last few months. We can address them under nuisance and/or the dangerous building code, but that takes a process that's kind of overdoing it perhaps for these kind of issues. Gary and I are working on an approach that might give us some relief from the complaints, but it's difficult, and you should know that it's not easy to take enforcement when our ordinance isn't clear about that unless you have a permit for a junkyard or something. That's an easier.
Gary Fuller or Gary Mallett?
Not Gary Lawler.
Gary Fuller.
Yeah.
Gary Fuller.
I'd just like to make a comment on that. I personally, and I am sure many people in this town don't have an issue with changing that ordinance. If you go out the Knowles Road,
believe me,
that is a nightmare along there. Not, it doesn't bother me.
You're talking about right at the bottom of the hill?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
that's growing.
Yeah, I'll get to
So I'm
that.
just saying, if we're gonna have something in that ordinance, and Gary is a good guy to know that,
Yeah.
you won't get any arguments from this person, I can guarantee you.
Well, there's an issue of code violations.
Yeah.
And I've talked to Gary about the need to start issuing violations and issuing penalties. And we're going to start doing that. That's one of the properties that will be getting a code violation. Well, it has gotten code violations. We're waiting for the response. I think he's got 1 or 2 days to go, but we don't expect a response. We'll be issuing a notice of violation and with a course of action that they have to follow and a penalty. Similar to a number of building code violations, decks going up without a permit, decks going up after they've been noticed without a permit, and then on another building on the same property, another deck. So that's actually knowingly violating the ordinance. So we'll be taking more serious approach to our code violations. I think that when people realize that you're going to be serious about violations they're taking, hopefully they'll stop, especially if you start meting out penalties that impact them. So that's what we're planning on doing, and Gary and I are going to be working hand in hand on that. Facilities issues. There's a few issues that I just want to bring you up to speed on. We have a reverse osmosis unit that we haven't been monitoring or testing on a routine basis, which really it requires to be done. We need a pH meter and total dissolved solids meter and some training. Now, we can get the training online. I talked to the plumber. He basically said he didn't feel qualified to provide that training. So they installed it. So online, there's a thing, a 9-hour training course for about $216, which we'll be going through. And then we'll be monitoring it on a weekly basis, although they say you can monitor it daily. I don't want to do that. Weekly, I think, is fine. The reason for that is because if you don't monitor it and the membranes get clogged, the pump pressure goes up, and you potentially could have a failure of a pump. Now, why is that important? Because when looking at the facility here, and I talked to the engineer, and the engineer said, oops, There is no drainage in that road. So if a plastic pipe gets broken, we got 1,500 gallons of water that would make a nice $1,500 or 1,500 gallon wet spot. So we're looking at what to do relevant to that, either moving the reverse osmosis unit back into the heating furnace room or pushing a hole through. If in fact we can do that and make it work. So I've got Bruce looking at that and providing me with cost estimates. Okay. We're doing some work on the lighting system. The lighting system is a pretty complex system, and it's kind of hard to program, and it's been not working well. So Dan and I have talked, and Dan's going to provide for some fixes there. I'll get that more information on that. The handicap doors for the front part of the building, they've been ordered. I was told they were going to be in this week. Once they're in, we'll get them up and installed, and we should solve the problem with the handicap doors. I'm waiting for Neocraft to give me a proposal on the sign so that we know what they think it will cost for them, for us to move it. Stop sign at the end of the drive, that came up last week, I think it was. We talked to the road committee about that. Road committee just essentially does not feel it's necessary to put a stop sign there, recognizing that there's increased traffic and stuff. But the road committee, if I'm not mistaken, essentially recommended against putting that stop sign in.
There was also some comments about the state, it would be a state stop sign,
Right,
not
right.
ours.
Yeah.
But we could ask.
It's essentially a driveway, although it is a commercial facility here with a number of.
I don't understand what's the harm in putting one there. You should come to a stop anyway, you shouldn't just go darting out on that road.
Yeah, it's just another distraction, and it potentially could block the view with some of the discussion.
Right, there's a lot of discussions
Just
around it.
little things, but it's like,
The issue is it's basically a driveway, and people know that you're entering the highways, it's on the end of your driveway.
So it hasn't really been a problem at all to date.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I know it's a concern, it's a concern.
There hasn't been an accident there.
Well, that's not to say it shouldn't go up. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the road committee essentially recommended against that.
Howard's got his hand up.
I would just put one note of caution in. I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons why we didn't have a problem with DOT when we wanted to build in here was because we said that was a road, not a driveway.
Yeah.
It's a road, it's got a name on it, so I would not justify doing something and making notes or recording in minutes of the committees that, because it's a driveway, we don't feel we need to put a stop sign up there.
Well,
That's going,
that
that's what we got the.
Well, I wasn't aware of that particular conversation.
Yeah.
But actually, there was a proposal to change, to name the road, right?
Well, it had a name.
It did, Pit Road.
Right.
And the proposal to change.
And that's what made us not putting in another exit off of 27, which the state was not going to allow.
Okay, I'm just going with what I understand. And the proposal to change the name, no one wanted to change, so we pulled the pit.
it's a discontinued road, it's no longer a road, because
Yeah.
they're forced to come up the other way now.
Right.
Discontinued.
And we have the address of 990 Manchester Road, which essentially says this is the driveway.
I know.
I would think if it becomes a problem, then we'd go to the state and have state put a stop sign.
Yeah.
Okay, and just one other issue, I'm continuing to seek proposals for the security cameras because we have cameras that aren't working both at the Center for All Seasons and the transfer station, and we don't have cameras here, so I've got a proposal here for cameras. I'm seeking proposal from Fairpoint. John Perkins apparently installs them, so I'm looking to see what he'll charge, and then we'll make that a matter of local
He doesn't work with
budget.
one anymore, another company.
Well, whatever he's working, I don't know what company he's working at. I thought it was Fairpoint.
No,
Talking to the telephone company about that? I thought we were talking about a security company.
We are, and he apparently is working for security, but these companies do various things, so I just assumed that he was working for Fairpoint. But I've got his phone number, I talked to him, and he said he'd be coming up at the beginning of next week to talk to me. And then also working on the front reception area that we talked about, and looking for proposals on that. And these are all budget items, and I want you to know that I'm not letting them go. And that's it. Is there any questions?
I was hoping you was gonna run out of paper there pretty soon.
Well, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
I just want to keep it this. Thank you very much.
I'd like it right in pencil from now on so you can erase it when you finish using it.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to talk about?
We got,
Do I know?
Can we,
Yes.
can we deal on the building, town office? Can we talk about that now?
if you
Oh,
want to. You know what the final offer was?
Yes.
And we accepted that.
Yes.
And it's going through, I asked Gail to send me an email today as whether or not it was closed. She was going to send me the closing date, and I don't think I got an email yet. The last time I looked, I didn't.
I mean, if we've made a deal, there's public information.
Yeah.
We can,
It's 93,000.
yeah.
And it was for the proposal, well, the people who are purchasing it are looking to put in a dance studio. So, as I understand it.
Anything else?
I don't have it.
No, I just wanted to, I
Yeah, I
wanted a
got
little
you.
update on that.
Can I get we have to go into executive session now, so thank you all for coming.
Can I make a motion to take a 5-minute?
I think we'll take 5
Oh, we
minutes.
got